All right, I guess we'll go ahead and get this started. We are going to call to order the regularly planned Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for the month of April. We'll call this to order and do a roll call. Stephanie?
Commissioner Briley?
Here.
Commissioner Bach?
Here.
Commissioner Byers?
Here.
Commissioner McElina?
Aye.
Commissioner Richardson?
Here.
Commissioner Rigsby?
Here.
Absent is Commissioner Williams. Also present is Stephanie and Samantha for the Village of Ruidoso. You do have a quorum.
Great. Thanks, Stephanie. We have a quorum. I guess the next step would be to see if there's any conflicts of interest for items we have today.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
as I have stated in all my previous meetings, my primary employer is with the Highway Department, and there is a item on Meacham, which is Highway 48, and I just need to ask the commission if that's okay. I have no financial conflict, if that's all right.
Okay. Commissioners, any issue?
None.
Seeing none raised, I think you'll be able to participate fully and vote on the matter. Thank you. Okay. The next item would be certification of compliance with Resolution 2023-01. Stephanie?
I do certify that the meeting and properties were posted in accordance with Resolution 2023-01 and in compliance with Section 5440 of the Municipal Code.
Great. Thank you. All right. Bullet number 3, approval of agenda. We have a couple of items here on the agenda today.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second. Great. We have a motion and a second. Stephanie, should we go to a roll call vote?
Sure. Commissioner Bach?
Aye.
Commissioner Briley?
Yes.
Commissioner
Yes.
Byers?
Aye.
Commissioner McElina?
Aye.
Commissioner Richardson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rigsby?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Great.
Zach did just join us via Zoom.
Great. Hey, Zach. Thanks for joining.
Hi there, guys.
Great. Okay. Bullet number 4, approval of last month's regularly scheduled meeting minutes for March 7th, 2023.
Mr. Chairman, at the beginning of the meeting, I stated conflict or abstaining from item 6F, but in the minutes, it really doesn't identify 6F. And so I was just wondering if under that item that's in the minutes, if you could at least state that I abstained.
I stated, since Chairman Briley stated you would be abstaining from votes pertaining to item 6F on the agenda as he knows of the
Right,
property.
but 6F is not labeled in the minutes.
Oh,
There's no 6F in the minutes. Other than that, I approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a roll call vote. Stephanie?
Commissioner Bach?
Aye.
Commissioner Briley?
Yes.
Commissioner Byers?
Aye.
Commissioner McElina?
Aye.
Commissioner Richardson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rigsby?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Great. Thank you. And I think that was the last official act of our former chairman,
Yes.
Commissioner Briley. He has now.
Sign the minutes.
He signed the minutes and is now officially passing it over to me. So,
Give me that gavel.
yeah, do you want to hit it?
One last time.
Great. Okay. I think now that we've approved minutes, we'll move to the public input portion of the meeting. So we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. We'll conduct the hearing under the following procedures to protect the due rights of all parties. Parties of the hearing will be identified as well as the witnesses to the parties that they may wish to give testimony. All persons will offer testimony and will be sworn in. All persons offering testimony will be limited to the relevant matter being heard. So just some ground rules for the folks that are here today and that are on the Zoom. We do appreciate that and appreciate you being here to give your opinion on the matter. So yeah, do I have to hit the gavel to make it officially open?
Do we have any public input, everything's not on the agenda?
I didn't see any, no, I guess not. So I guess it's the quasi judicial? Yeah. Sorry, that was the one that public input. I don't think there's anything, is there, on the agenda? So then we can move to the quasi judicial public hearing. We have 2 cases today. Should we start on the first one? Samantha, do you want to give us a rundown of case 2023-37?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Sean McCracken is requesting approval to encroach 3.9 feet into the required 10-foot setback as designated by the R1 Single Family Residential District to construct an addition on an existing home at 101 Wiley Road, Lot 6C, Block 10 of the Cream Meadows Country Club subdivision. Are you all the applicants? Okay, if you'd like to come up to the table.
Great. And while you're coming in, if you'll just raise your hand, state your name, and swear to tell the truth.
Sean McCracken.
Brenda McCracken.
Great, great, excellent. So tell us what you're hoping to do and what you're looking for a variance on.
What we're trying to do is we're trying to keep the integrity of the house, to keep it all cylindrical and everything matching, and also too, we're thinking in the future is when we get old, that we can live on one level and not have to have multiple stairs, because it's a 2-story now. And so we tried to look at it and go to the north side of the house. The north side of the house, you'd have to tear the entire left side of the north side of the house off, and then by then be back into stairs. The south side of the house is already within, I think, 12 or 14 feet of the easement. So the easiest way, I had some architects come out, some contractors, we looked over, and to keep the integrity of the house, the way it's gonna look and how it's gonna flow, where it doesn't look like an add-on, is at the east side, just to continue the roof line and to extend out. And then the reason it encroached is right past the few feet, about 20 feet, I guess, or so, the end of the house, the lot line just turns just slightly and heads down to the little creek back there. So we're trying to just add on a 3-car garage with a bedroom above it. We were gonna do just a bedroom above it, but we didn't like the look of having just, it looked like it's on stilts, so it doesn't look like a house from like TRC next to the water. So we're trying to keep the integrity of the subdivision, the way the house looks, and just keep it flowing a little easier.
So to add to that, it's a chalet home, so it's A-frame basically. So to add on in any fashion, rather it be the sides, it's just not gonna work roof line wise, or would if we had a billion. So the property is his mother's. She passed in December. We are purchasing the home. It's not a given property to us. We are purchasing it. And we just want to keep it in the family and continue that tradition. But it was built in the 70s. It's got a wet bar. It's got some fun stuff in there that's going to have to come out to make it conducive to what we want it. And keeping it all on one level was the big goal.
Anything else to add?
No, I mean, that's what we're trying to achieve. It just needs needs to be updated, mainly.
Which we will be doing in the next few months if this goes through.
Okay. Thank you. I think at this time we'll move to any others that want to speak on for or against this, correct? Am I right in where we're going, Samantha?
Yes, if you'll open the public hearing. And
Okay. All right. Thank you for your presentation. We're going to now open it for public comment
Okay,
to hear from the other community members. Thank you.
thank you.
So at this time, if anybody would like to speak for or against this particular variance, you may come on down. If you don't mind stating your name and address, and we'll get you sworn in.
Bear with me.
Take your time.
My name is Philip Johnson. This is my wife Judy. We own the property right next door to their property.
Okay.
And
And before, just do you mind raising your right hand, swear to tell the truth for?
well, to tell the truth.
Great. Thank you. Likewise. Yeah, okay, good.
Better.
Yeah, yeah.
I sent Stephanie a note stating that I was dead set against this, but at that point, I didn't know where the garage was proposed to be, where the encroachment would really be, and exactly what shape it would be. Looking at the documentation that I've received today, I don't really have any objection to it. I think it's a good attempt to try to come up with a way to get around some problems, so. And I'd like to welcome our new neighbors.
And I will bring you Down Street. You're gonna need 'em. My girls already have too many. I promise.
Okay,
That's all.
okay, yeah, thank you for your comments. And so you sent the email to Stephanie that we have in our packets?
Yes.
And would like to say that you're no longer opposed to
I'm no
the
longer
variance?
opposed, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you for coming down here and speaking as well. Okay. Would anyone else like to speak for or against this item? Anyone on the Zoom meeting? Okay. Seeing none, at this time, I'm going to go ahead and close the public input. Commissioners, now it is your time to ask questions or get clarification.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Briley.
So on this picture, it looks like on the back, it sort of drops off. So is that part of the creek floodplain, or are you going, is there any issues with the floodplain going back that far and filling in the dirt?
Do you mind just coming down so we can get you on the record? Thank you.
And I sent updated photos of what the new addition's gonna be with the floodplain. I called Bill Powers, and there's a small corner on the, what would that be, southeast, down there by the creek. But I'm up about 25 feet, I would say maybe 20 feet from the creek, so there's no floodplain. There is, but we're up on the hill from there.
And you're going to fill in the
Yeah.
look like a terrace.
The way it is on the very back is you have the roof line and it comes down, there's already a basement room down there, and it's flat. I'm gonna extend out 32 feet, and it's all flat to about 35 feet, and then it slowly starts going down to the creek, so I'm gonna go right to where it starts heading down to the creek.
Mr. Chairman, so where's the driveway going?
I'm gonna cut a new driveway from Cree Meadows and cut it straight into the garage.
Okay. So that's not shown on your site plan drawing? Samantha, in your review, did you know that, and do you have comments about that?
No, I did not know that they were getting a new driveway.
Because we couldn't enter from the front. We tried to do that around the deck, but at the time you would cut a driveway and it would eat the entire front of the yard, and then the slope would be so steep to get down around into the garage. We just figured it would be easier just to cut a straight line straight over to Cree Meadows. And I had the forest department come out and look at the trees, and I had the road people come out and do my permit. I just got to pay for all that. But they approved everything. Everything was going to work as long as I met the 24-inch by 20-foot culvert, I believe, is what I had to put in there on the street side, yeah.
So Stephanie, for a staff report to make sure that it's okay for access onto Cree Meadows, do we need to have that for the packet or just confirmation that we know about it?
I think they were okay because they're only here for a variance request, but before they cut a driveway, they will be required to go through that whole process with the street department.
Okay.
And I do have that. I can send you a copy of that or email it to you or whatever.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, I lived across the street from the McCracken's mother for approximately 6 years, and the creek that he's referring to is not a creek.
It runs out of
So,
Innsbrook.
I mean, there's,
It trickles down through there.
you know, and I was very familiar with that property, and I think what they're doing is a very wise decision.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, just one more question. So, as you know, I always have a hard time with variances and showing the hardship. And I guess I need the applicant to explain what the hardship is. The hardship visual? Is the hardship access? Is it just something you want to do?
No.
Because there has to be a hardship.
The hardship is the access to it. The hardship also is keeping the integrity of the architect, just to keep it to where it doesn't look like an add-on or a side building. The hardship too is, there again, this should be my last house here in town, I would hope. And there's stairs in it already, and so we're trying to design it to where, when we get old, we can still live on that middle floor. And everything's accessible, the bedrooms, the utility room's gonna be upstairs, everything's gonna be moved up to that middle level. And then that way, if something horrible happens to us, we can still live in the middle of the house. So the hardship would be I couldn't add on to the front, I can't add on to the east, or the north or south side. So the only logical place is to the east side, on the end of the house. So everything flows nice and looks good and looks like it's been built recently, and not just to have a hodgepodge.
Tucked behind.
Yeah, just a mess, yeah.
And just a clarification on that, you couldn't move the garage forward or to the north because of that look?
Because
of that design?
the way everything inside the existing house is lined up, the way the structural, where everything has to tie in together to support, because that roof is so steep, it all supports itself off of the roof. So if I gut it, then I lose the integrity of the roof of the new addition, and it would not flow with that steep A-frame style roof. And it would be harder to tie into, and it would just be an engineering expense, is what it would be.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, other questions?
And this is probably a stupid question, but you do own from Cree over to the house, right? So we're not cutting through anything else.
Yeah, it's from the whole corner all the way to the little stream or creek or whatever yes.
And, so are you gonna do basically a remodel of the house, because it looks like you have the front now on Wiley,
Yes.
and you're gonna set it all from Cree?
Just the entry to the garage.
Okay,
The
just
front
the
of
entry
house
to
will
the
still-
garage.
Front of the house will still be on Wiley.
Okay.
Yeah, everything in there.
Yes, sir.
One comment for your benefit. I've seen that property when it is raining cats and dogs. And if he's gonna put a driveway across that, I kind of think maybe you better take a look at the size of the culvert again, because it gets really
It
short
does.
coming down through there.
Yeah, I gotta have I think a 24 by 20.
Okay.
Because normally it's an 18 is what they normally put in, and he said that I'd have to go with a 24 being so close to the Cree. And that runoff, because it runs off from the movie theater all up on Meacham and comes down through there. So, yeah, I'd have to go to a 24 size, just to accommodate the runoff. Because it can get crazy down through there, for sure.
Okay. And that, as I think we've established, all that will come through when you apply for your building permit.
Yes.
If this variance is granted. So, Commissioners, I'll entertain motions.
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Okay. Based upon the foregoing findings of fact per 54-92 and 54-66 of the Village Code, I move to grant the requested variance for case PV 2023-37 with the conditions stated in the case report.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay. Seeing none, Stephanie, shall we go do a roll call?
Commissioner Baugh?
Aye.
Commissioner Briley?
Yes.
Commissioner Byers?
Aye.
Commissioner McElina?
Aye.
Commissioner Richardson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rigsby?
Aye.
Motion carries.
You have your variance. Have fun. Thank you.
Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming and participating. Yeah, I understand.
They must have known to tug on my heartstrings. Oh, yeah.
Okay, I think we'll move on to the next item that we have. Samantha, I believe you can provide some information on this request.
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. With us today, we have Brian Dooley and two of his, I believe, design team members with Region 9 Head Start requesting approval to develop a commercial Head Start using modular buildings at 1211 Meacham Drive, lots 5 through 10, Block 3 of the Airport West subdivision in the C2 zone.
Okay. Thank you. And who do we have representing the applicant today?
Mr. Chairman, my name is Brian Dooley from Region 9. I swear to tell the truth and everything that's said today. And I have with me, I'll let Josh introduce himself. Josh Hart, Modular Solutions, and I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks.
I think we have a gentleman online with us. We have John Farrell, also part of Modular Solutions, and David Roybal, part of our civil engineer from Pettigrew.
Okay. Great. Gentlemen on Zoom, if you'll just come off mute and swear to tell the truth on this subject, that'd be great.
Hi, yeah, this is David Roybal. Thank you guys for having me. I swear to tell the truth on any questions asked of me.
Great. Thank you. So what do we got going on, gentlemen?
Chairman, I'll just turn it over to Josh as the representative of Region 9. Thank you. Our client bought these lots and wanted to turn it into a commercial Head Start facility for the community. Wanted 2 drives from Meacham to help with the flow of when the kids are dropped off, make sure there's safety, and then we added the back drive required by the fire comments on Bonanza. As for what the Head Start does, you can describe it better than I. Yeah, Chairman, thank you for having us today. Region 9 over the since 1983 has developed considerable presence in the early childhood space for serving families in the communities of Lincoln County. We currently support 7 different programs that support up to 300 children and their families in the area. We employ 50-plus staff, and right now we're currently located in Sierra Vista with 2 Head Start classrooms, office space for about 14 people there. We have 3 classrooms at First Baptist Church up on Cree Meadows. We have 6 classrooms in the old Mount Annie's building on Meacham, and office space for staff in each of those locations as well. That's different than our primary Region 9 location at 2002 Sutter Drive. These are all early childhood services that are provided across our community. So we are in the process, we purchased this 2.1 acre tract on Meacham, and we've been working with Modular Solutions to build this, to design the building that would house 14 classrooms, an auditorium, and the office space for all of those services to be under one roof so that we can provide comprehensive services to those families. So that's the purpose of this design building. That property is located directly across from Sierra Blanca Pharmacy on Meacham, the 2.1 acre tract between the new Allsups and the old sheriff's office there and the North Creek Plaza.
Okay.
Josh and Modular Solutions have done some incredible, amazing work with the design of the building. Been a lot of back and forth. We finally come to a common agreement on the floor plan, the site plan. I think they've done some homework with quite a few of the folks here at Village Hall. Yes, in preparation for that as well. Done the geotech and survey of the lot, talked to forestry and everybody that we can. David and his team did a traffic study. It's been working with transportation. We've done as much as we can up to this point, everyone that we can.
Okay. Great, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. And if you'll stick around just for a moment, I'm not sure we'll have any comments, but we'll have you just sit there. At this time, I think I'll open it up to public comments. I don't know if anybody present would like to speak for or against this. Okay. I don't believe there's anybody online. There is one individual, it looks like. Okay. Okay, great. Okay. Seeing no public comments, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment section. So commissioners, now is your time to ask the applicants if you have any questions.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner, yep.
explain modular. How's it going to not look like a modular building?
So what we do is factory-built buildings. We follow all the same codes that you would stick-built, the IBC and everything, and go through CID for that. Essentially, what we do is stick-built on what's called the chassis. And we take what the growth of the manufactured home industry has done in the developments and things that they've done, and we've turned that into a custom commercial buildings, which we've done for many different people, our latest one being in Bordeaux for the hospital. And so when we get done with it, it doesn't look like what you would think of when you think of modular, which is kind of a duplex classroom or a home or something like that. We use custom sidings, custom finishes, and there is a rendering that we did in there that shows what the look will be for that.
Mr. Chairman, so the chassis is only just to transport it to the job site and you take it off the chassis, or does it stay on the chassis?
It'll stay on the chassis. So in this case, what we're considering doing is what is a perimeter frame. So it's a metal perimeter chassis with steel floor joists in it, and the building sits on top of it. It gets to site, sits on a stem wall. We take the axles and the hitches off, set it down, weld it to it so it's permanently fixed to that stem wall, and has a crawl space for the utilities to go under.
Just a point of clarification on that. So you'll pour the stem wall in place, and then you'll essentially weld the frame to the stem wall?
Correct.
Okay,
So basically, it's a pier and beam.
yeah.
Is what you created.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner?
this is for David. David, there's a lot of impervious area. Is that little pond going to be enough for drainage? I'm assuming David's doing the drainage?
Yes.
Yeah, we had some initial discussions with staff on that, and we had accounted for, I believe that was a 10-year storm. I wasn't able to find a commercial development drainage standard. The subdivision regs talk about entire subdivisions, so that's what that pond is for.
For the 10-year draining onto Meacham or draining off of Meacham into pond?
10-year pre-verse post difference or storage. And then we're proposing a pipe outlet to connect to an existing drop inlet on Meacham.
Our printing is small on this drawing. Your large retaining walls are where? Along the front? Is that what I see?
Yes, if you're seeing sheet CS 101, it's shown as a thick black line
Yes.
called out with keynote 10. It runs on the frontage. It runs on both sides, along Bonanza and on the frontage.
Okay, I can see where it is. Those are pretty good retaining walls.
Yes, sir. And I believe what you're looking at is what we try to do to balance the site. There's some finesse work we could maybe do to try to reduce the retaining wall, but what we're showing is kind of a worst case of what we think's anticipated.
And you have gotten with Shane or Curtis on the access points on Meacham, correct? With the DOT?
With the DOT, I've had a scoping meeting with Mr. Sconald.
Good.
And and he's seen the layout. We were kind of wanting to confirm that the layout was okay before we finalize the traffic study, because I'm trying to do my best to negotiate back and forth on changes. That way we know the city's good with it, and then we can go back to Mr. Stonhold and go through his approval process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, so there hasn't been a traffic study done yet?
It hasn't been finalized, but we have done all the legwork for it.
That's 2 lanes through there. Looks like you're going to have a lot of traffic. No turn lanes or anything.
Well, we don't know yet, and that's
Yeah,
why after we
that's-
get this layout and the parking and the employees and how many kids, there may be a requirement to put an XL decel lane in there.
Yes, sir. I know that's your
Yeah.
point. That's your part. I got it. When you tell me that, I believe you.
Commissioners, any other questions for the applicants? Any comments?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, sir.
Based upon the foregoing findings of facts per 54-67 and 54-100 of the Village Code, I move to grant the site plan and concept approval of case number SP 2023-48 with the conditions stated in the case report.
I'll second.
Great. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, why don't we move to a roll call vote?
Commissioner Bach?
Aye.
Commissioner Briley?
Aye.
Commissioner Byers?
Aye.
Commissioner McElina?
Aye.
Commissioner Richardson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rigsby?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen.
Good luck.
Really appreciate it.
Good luck.
What's your time frame?
Well, this is one of the dominoes that needs to tip over.
One down, how many go? Yeah.
The anticipation would be that hopefully, all things permitting, that we can maybe be in that facility by the end of December.
Wow.
We'll be optimistic. Modular solutions.
Said that about the
Because of the remote build and controlled conditions, can do the site work and the site prep. And have that site developed and ready, but they're doing the building while that's going on under controlled conditions, bring it on site, set it, tie it in, have it ready to go. So that would be beneficial for us because there's some other factors involved with access to space for providing services to those children. And it's critical, the sooner we get in, the better it is, so. Biggest
You're going to be
holdups.
vacating all your other properties and just on this one central location now? Like the one on Sutterth also, or?
No, sir. So Region 9 is a relatively large organization, about 120 employees and services across, pre-birth through adulthood. And so the Sutterth property is our primary Region 9 office space, and so our core offices are there. All the early childhood services will be located under this roof.
Okay.
So not enough space over there to house the rest of the projects.
I know you just got in there good too, so.
So the church and Mount Annie's, you're no longer going to utilize?
So we'll be in the church, questionable, hopeful through, on a month-to-month with them through December when this gets finished. There was some conversation about early childhood school for a Christian school being reopened there, but I don't think that all got lined up like it was going to, so we may be able to stay. If we can't stay there, then we're working with Ryan Trosper up at EMU Ruidoso to provide 3 of their classrooms up there that we can put kids in. There's some pretty tremendous waivers you have to go through for early childhood with natural lighting and playground space and that type of thing that Eastern has a little bit of difficulty meeting because of the interior nature of their classrooms and then the lack of playground space that's appropriate for children. Right? So as a last-ditch effort, we would go there with waivers from CYFD and from the Office of Head Start federal grant. But those are a lot more dominoes that have to tip over. And then, if we have to, we will, and it's really neat that we have the opportunity to maybe take advantage of that space if we have to. The Mount Annie's building was sold to some people. We've signed a month-to-month lease with them. They're not super excited about gaining full ownership of that yet, I think, because we defer quite a bit of their mortgage on that with the rent that we pay to them. So it's advantageous for them to leave us in there for now. But it's not big. It's not a big enough facility without some serious redesign, and it's been a challenge with some of the difficulties they've had with utilities and roof problems and those types of things there. So we're excited about having a really nice consolidated center of services for the young children in our communities. And it's theoretically going to be right up the road from the housing development that you guys are putting in place. So we're also working on a transit stop there at the facility, because as those people move into the housing project that you guys are doing, there'll be quite a few of those people that will be able to take advantage of the services that we offer.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you
Yeah.
for the information and all that you do for the community.
We appreciate y'all's support for sure.
Yeah. Okay. As we're wrapping up some paperwork here, I think we'll close the quasi judicial public hearing and move to the public hearing. We have a couple of amendments, and by a couple, I mean like a complete redesign of chapter 54. Thank you again, gentlemen. So Sam, really looking for guidance on this and how you think the best way it is to tackle this.
So we were going to leave it up to you as the chairman. Did you want to go page by page? Did you want just a highlight overview from Phyllis? We have Phyllis Taylor with Site Southwest on. If you all have any comments, changes that you'd like to throw out now, we can make those instead of going page by page, or however you'd like to handle it is fine.
Okay. Why don't we start with some just broad strokes overview about what has changed? I know that there was a number of formatting changes in like the flow of the document, but if there's anything outside of formatting that's a material change to the content, maybe we start there, and then we can open up to questions.
Okay, this is Phyllis Taylor with Site Southwest. And I have a little presentation that kind of gives you the broad overview of what's changed. And then I can share my screen. I'm not sure. Let me share my screen first, because I think Zoom might disappear when I turn on the presentation. Can you see it?
Chapter 54 update, yes.
Yeah, we can see the PowerPoint presentation that says Chapter 54 update.
Okay, yeah, and we've been working on pieces of this for quite some time. And these are the first two modules of 4. So we're looking at today just the administration section, which is module 1, and the use section, which is module 2. And probably of these sections, the one with the most changes is the use section. But just to, I know some of you have been on planning and zoning the whole time we've been working on this, but the project goals were to kind of give a unified code that streamlines the land use procedures and the definitions, brings everything kind of up to date. There were some internal conflicts with the way the code today is put together. So we're just trying to clarify everything and update definitions as needed. So the first module that you have includes general provisions. And what we have done is some reorganization to kind of move pieces to where they fit. And in this first division, that's probably mostly what's happened, other than updating the definitions. So in the new ordinance, the first section just kind of defines the ordinance itself. So if you look on the left-hand side of the slide, there are some sections at the bottom that talk about application fees, violations, and the application review process. The information about fees and penalties have been moved to administration. And the application review process has moved to a new module that'll be the next thing you get, that sort of consolidates all the procedures. So the attempt there was to move everything that has to do with procedures together, because right now they're kind of spread out around the ordinance in different locations. In the Division 2, which is in this same file, it's the administration piece. So it defines the actors in any decision-making related to Chapter 54. So it talks about the roles of each group. And so instead of trying to define procedures here, it just says what the council is responsible for, the Board of Appeals, Planning and Zoning, Community Development Department, the Planning Administrator, the City Attorney, and then how you would appeal to District Court. And this is where we put the fees and what happens when there are violations and penalties. So these all have to do with the administration of the ordinance, but not the procedures. So everything in the current ordinance that was under administration, that was procedure related, is in a new section that just tries to clarify all the procedures and have consistency in how those procedures are applied. Then in the Division 3 that you have, there are all the definitions together. There are some in the sort of last piece that we're working on now, with all the other development standards and regulations. Some of those, like wireless telecommunications, as an example, have their own definitions, but all the general definitions that apply within the zoning code and the subdivision ordinance are in this location. So we've added definitions for new use types. So your cannabis ordinance and changes to how you're dealing with mobile vending. I think there's new definitions for tobacco sales that are related to a state law that's been passed in the last couple of years since we've been working on this. There's definitions for all of that in the new ordinance. And we've also grouped definitions so that all the residential definitions or all the dwelling unit definitions are together. All the flood hazard definitions are together, in addition to being in alphabetical order in the ordinance. So you may have some questions about this because there's some differences more than in other sections in this particular division. Then on the second module you have, which I guess we are not talking about yet, is that right?
Yeah, it might make sense to just focus on divisions 1 through 3, because I think Division 4 will take some more discussion.
Yeah, so let me go back up. I'd forgotten that it was separated in two different pieces.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So do you have questions? And I can get out of this, if you'd like, stop sharing and then move, and I can put the document on the screen if that would be helpful. I know you have it in front of you.
Phyllis, this is Alan.
Hey,
What is I thumb through things, and usually I'm used to seeing strikeouts and underlines and stuff, and there's not a lot of changes, or is there any major changes in these that we're looking at today?
there should be some changes, but this has been through several iterations, and I think some of the strikeouts were maybe eliminated.
They're just,
And even some of the additions. So for the purpose, for example, the old purpose that we have didn't have the point A, implement the Village of Ruidoso comprehensive plan and vision for long-range development goals. That was added in. And so admittedly, that is a tricky part that we don't see clearly what was added because all of the formatting has changed. So in theory, everything has changed.
Right.
So,
So the issues that have come up to our group has always been, and I don't know if these are the right modules, but the cannabis laws. I'm going to ask about that one. Variances, I think this is in module 4, right?
Or 3.
Oh, it's in 3?
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, it'll be in, there's 4 modules. There's the 1 is the administration
Right.
piece. The 2 is the use standards and use district definitions. 3 is the procedures, and 4 is basically everything else. So it's the development standards and all the kind of special standalone ordinances like signs and landscaping, walls, things like that.
So Sam, I know this board has put some limits on housing or additional dwellings. Was that voted down at council, or is it now in this new group?
It's been incorporated into this, and some other changes that were added in were to allow for live work in a C2 zone.
And that would be in the next one, right?
That'll
That'd
be in the next
4.
piece, yeah, and I can show you how that's organized.
Right. So a lot of, from when I briefly went through this, a lot of this was just moving around Division 1 for Chapter 54.
That's correct. The main differences that you would see are in the definitions where we've added definitions for the new state statutes and the new ordinances that the village has adopted.
Okay. So maybe it makes sense, if the board's cool with it, just to go to definitions and kind of look more closely at that. I'm open to suggestions from this group. But instead of going page by page, line by line, I think we focus on what has changed rather than yeah. Okay. Getting consensus up here. The only thing that I do, the village comprehensive plan on the purpose, that's voted on by the village council, right, Sam? The comprehensive plan has been implemented in development goals? Because now that, look, when I read purpose, that's the number one thing that this ordinance is focused on, is implementing that plan. And that's voted on by the council, right? I just want to
And the one change that we put in here, the ordinance that exists talked about compliance with the comprehensive plan or implementation of the comprehensive plan. But we just added language to say it could be other relevant plans, because you're going to have some plans that are not necessarily the comprehensive plan, but would be relevant, like area, if there's a plan for a certain area or a master plan for a certain area, and those are adopted by council and have some standing, you would want to be able to take those into account too when you're making decisions.
Okay. Helpful context, thank you. And I think, Zach, you were asking if you can get out of here? Is that what that chat said?
Chairman, I thought that was going to Stephanie. I apologize.
It was, but she has everything up on
She
the
was,
screen.
but we can see it.
Oh, whoops.
If you need to head out, I guess that's acceptable.
I can stick around or head out, whatever you guys want.
If you have reviewed, I assume at some point he will review this as part of his job. So I don't see any reason why you need to stick around for this.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Chairman.
Bye, Zach.
Bye.
The other question that I had before we move to definitions, fees and penalties. I know that we want to incorporate all fees into the amendment in Appendix A, I believe. Was the intention of this putting them in one location so there shouldn't be a reference to fees anywhere else?
That's correct, and then we like the ability to update fees by resolution instead of having to do the ordinance.
Okay. So with that in mind, I did notice that there were still fees related to short-term rentals in that section for the overlay plan. That's in Division 4. So we might need to just update that so it references the application fees.
Can we get that changed, Phyllis?
Yeah. And, yeah, so having you guys look through this is really helpful because we are finding, and actually, it's pretty typical that for the first 6 months or so that the village works with this document, you're gonna find things that aren't working as well as they should. And so 6 months after adoption or a year after adoption, there should be a cleanup
Okay.
with everything that's come up. So that's a good example.
So we don't have to get it right now.
Well, no, you want to get it as right as possible.
Let them read it.
Fair enough, fair enough. Okay. Well, since let's go through the first one, definitions. Can you give us a summary of some of the changes? I see that we broke out like alcohol and liquor-related definitions. We broke out automotive. We broke out cannabis.
Right, and the definitions didn't necessarily change, but they're grouped so that they're together and not scattered throughout. So the things that are in addition are, the cannabis definitions were added, and those are based on the ordinance, and though that in turn is related back to state law. So those are in there. We sort of grouped child and adult daycare definitions together and tied those to the state law regulating those facilities. We had a discussion about whether we should include apartment building or not apartment building because we talk about multifamily. And so we're just leaving it and saying it refers back to multifamily. And for whatever reason, it's like
It's in here.
faded out on my.
An apartment building's in here twice. It's on page.
Yeah, I
11.
think everything is in twice, maybe. It's in its alphabetical order and it's in under the groupings.
Okay, that's helpful to understand. With apartment building, it says common hallways. What about doors that are directly outside?
Yeah, I had a question about how we want to deal with that.
Okay.
And I think we just, I've lost it now. I think we just say see dwelling multifamily and probably need to make sure that gets in both places.
Okay.
So I'll make sure that happens.
Yeah, it's windy.
The last 2 meetings were snow.
Now it's wind. Hopefully it'll get nice soon. Okay. Outside of the dwelling unit changes, is there anything else that we should be aware of here? Seems like it's just incorporation of state statute more than anything.
Yeah, I think we've gotten some more modern definitions of mobile vending, and trying to make sure that the definitions kind of apply to what the village is actually dealing with food trucks or retail trucks. Another thing that we did is in the existing ordinance, there was like a whole host of manufacturing definitions. So like every type of manufacturing had its own listing as a land use, and some of them had their own definitions. So if you look at under manufacturing definitions, we've separated them into a general definition of manufacturing, artisan manufacturing, which would be like jewelry or artwork, often done in combination with some other uses, the small breweries, wineries, et cetera, as kind of handmade things. Then light manufacturing, heavy manufacturing, and then any special manufacturing that is something out of the ordinary. You would only have one of them maybe in your community.
Okay.
So it's trying to get to the gist of what sort of manufacturing the village might actually be looking at as a use, but not have to call out every single thing you could possibly make. Like there was clothes manufacturing and hat manufacturing and just a lot of specifics in the old code that didn't seem to be necessary, that a more general definition would encompass anything that's new and not leave you with an outdated definition if people are no longer manufacturing hats, as an example.
Okay, thank you. Question real quickly, just because it's going to come up in the next section that we talk about with usage. The dwelling unit, single family, two family, multifamily. I know that when it comes to sourcing financing for these dwelling units, the reason why I bring it up is because do we want to align in that definition? Anything below a 4-unit is a small multifamily. Anything above would be a commercial multifamily. This says occupants of 3 or more. I don't know if that matters, but it might impact down the road of the usage in the zoning districts when we get to that one. So I guess my question is, for the dwelling units, where did these definitions come from? Is it a state statute? Is it?
No, it was just looking at how the uses are in the use table and in the different districts. But we could, hold on, I'm making a note of what you just said.
Yeah, because if you're trying to get a loan for a multifamily that's above 5 units, it's a commercial loan. And so I know that that's not directly related to this, but in my mind, if you're getting a commercial loan, it should be a higher density zoning rather than something that, like an R2, you could get 2, 3, 4 units on an R2 as an example. That's just my thought. I don't know if you guys have opinions.
Well, we could have the single family, 2 family, and then 3 to 4 family as a definition, and then multifamily, anything 5 or more. If you think that would work.
Goes with the industry.
With the financial
Yeah,
side, yeah, makes sense.
okay. Yeah, that might be good, Phyllis.
Okay.
Okay.
And then we'll have to go through and just make sure that that doesn't do anything in the use sections, but I think that's not a problem.
Yeah.
Another place where we made changes to the definition was in manufactured housing and trying to tie the, or modular and manufactured housing, trying to tie those definitions to the standards that the state applies out of the Construction Industries Division with respect to permanent foundations and size of unit and how they get regulated, because the modular homes or the manufactured homes are treated differently in that respect than mobile homes.
Right. Is there a difference, sorry, Sam, this is kind of unrelated, but we approved the site plan of a modular building on a commercial lot. Was that approval saying we were good with it being modular, essentially? Do we need to approve items like that going forward?
Because it was a commercial development is why we had them come before you all,
Okay,
not necessarily the type of building.
okay,
And if it's a manufactured home that meets UBC standards, it would be placed on a lot the same way a single-family traditional construction would be. So that's the difference there. The mobile home has a different definition and is treated differently in the zoning code
right,
and in the state law.
okay,
So mobile vending, we had a little bit of difference to kind of define what kind of mobile vending might be dealt with by the village. And then a lot of the rest is just moved into the new location.
Was the RV definition changed at all? Recreational vehicle?
I don't think so, but I would have to go back and compare.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Stephanie.
Should it be?
No, I don't believe so. I was just confirming.
Yeah, the other
That's
thing
another
that we
area that
did
we
is that in the existing code, there is a whole lot of specific retail listed as uses in different districts. And so we've kind of consolidated that into general retail and shopping centers so that in the uses, you're not having to regulate very specific business types that may have a similar impact to another business.
Okay. Okay,
And then we pulled some of the other definitions, sign related, streets. The tobacco products is tobacco manufacturing and retail is another state statute change. Utility structures, we've defined now, they used to be like water was its own, sewer was its own, electric was its own, and they all are kind of similar impact and they were allowed in the same places. So we've just merged it into large and small utility structures.
okay.
And I think those are the main changes. I mean, some of it was just trying to get some consistency and simplification in how the land uses are defined.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay. If that's the main area where the changes were, commissioners, any questions?
The other change would just be that anything procedural was moved into a procedures chapter, so it's no longer under administration.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Any other questions for Phyllis? Does this come to a vote for this commission if we would recommend the changes outlined for this division? Okay.
I
So
move that we recommend the changes in the proposed outline.
Thank you, and I second it.
Okay,
Just part of this is public hearing. We are supposed to open a public hearing for discussion,
Oh,
if any, and
okay.
then close it.
I'm going to open the public hearing for any discussion. Seeing none, I'll close it as well.
Thank you. Now, you make that motion.
Move to, I think we heard a motion to recommend to council Division 1 of the changes to Chapter 54. And there was a second from Commissioner Michelina. So I don't think there's discussion from the board. We can go to a roll call vote.
Commissioner Baugh,
Aye.
Commissioner Briley,
Yes?
Commissioner Byers,
Aye.
Commissioner McLean,
Aye.
Commissioner Richardson,
Aye.
Commissioner Rigsby,
Aye.
motion carries.
Great. So the next one, should we take a quick break before we jump into the zoning districts?
Okay.
Were you going to approve the next one?
Yeah.
As is?
As is.
Why don't we take a couple of minutes and come back, because there are a few things that I think, there has been changes on usage and conditional use that I think we should talk about, just based off our experience. So why don't we take 5 minutes, or 4 minutes, and come back at 3:05, if that works for everybody. All right. Because the usage tables have changed pretty significantly from what I. All right, Phyllis, you got the board back. I think we'll jump into the zoning districts. So this would be Division 4 of Chapter 54. And I think you had a presentation for us, correct?
Yeah, and I was thinking that maybe if you guys have specific comments on this one, instead of the PowerPoint, which is really general, I'm going to show the screen and show the document itself. And that way we can look at the formatting and get your comments about that, and I can kind of explain what's happening there instead of just doing it in words. So let me share my screen again. Okay, can you see this?
Yes, can you zoom in? It's kind of hard to see for us.
Yes, I can zoom in.
I can't see it either.
Is that good enough or should I make it bigger?
Can you continue to zoom in?
Yeah, I can make it the width.
Yeah, I think that's better.
Okay. Okay. And this will be a little bit of page flipping, but at least you'll be able to see what we're talking about. So the beginning part of the zoning districts is the same information that was in there before, defining what the districts are, the permitted and conditional uses, what that means, the way they're organized. And so we talk about each district by defining its purpose, any district standards that are specific to that district. And sometimes the district standards will apply to more than one district, but it's district-wide, not a use-related standard. And then we are providing a reference to other applicable standards, the dimensional standards for each district, plus links to the other regulations that the village has that people need to be aware of. And we haven't put the links in because the whole document's not assembled, but there will be links and these things that say table blank and section blank or have an old reference that's highlighted. Those will all be updated once we get everything compiled and numbered correctly. So each district talks about the types of uses that are allowed. It talks about standards that apply to the district that are not necessarily use related. So in this case, the principal dwelling and the accessory dwelling, it's not about the dwelling, it's about that there's only one per lot. So that anything like that that applies district-wide, that's here. And then for each one, we have the dimensional standards, and then we list other applicable standards that the village has. And in these spaces, there will be links to those.
Phyllis,
So that, yeah,
I thought we were gonna reduce that, the lot area to just be that 7,500.
okay.
And then the front setback, we were reducing that as well since we get so many variance requests.
Yeah, to 15.
And the sides and the rear as well.
So reduce them, what should the front be?
Stephanie, do you remember what you talked about?
I believe that was 15.
And the side?
Sides were 10, and then we modified by the use
Was the rear changed?
for the accessory structures on the side was 5.
Okay,
And on the accessory dwelling unit, so today it has to be your primary residence if you want to apply for an ADU. I don't think it's listed in here that it has to be primary. I guess the structures in section blank, I don't know what that's referring to there.
oh, it's referring to the use-specific standards.
Okay.
So can you say that again in case we need to change this?
Yeah, so in the code today, it says you can have an ADU if it's your primary residence. I personally think having an ADU is, even if it's not your primary residence, as an example, if I have a building and if I have a long-term rental and there's space to add another unit, another dwelling unit and rent that out long-term, whether it's my primary residence or not, I think that's a good thing for long-term rentals here. My worry is that if we don't define it as primary or we don't define the rental terms, people will start adding ADUs to their cabins that they have and do short-term rentals. And so they'll have two short-term rentals on the same property. You see what I'm saying? And
That's what he's saying, Phyllis. Right now, the code reads it has to be owner occupied, the main structure, and then the other dwelling has to be a long-term rental.
well, the long-term rental piece, it just says to have an ADU, to apply for a permit, it has to be on your primary residence.
And then the other one can be,
It can be, in theory, anything right now.
it doesn't say long-term.
It does in the
Does
current
it?
code.
It does? Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna, I could try to edit it here, or I could just make a note.
I think a note,
So
yeah, go
are
ahead.
ADUs
Okay, so,
eligible for nightly?
Are they not? Okay.
But how do you control that? Yeah.
Something's coming before council in April though, because we have a current homeowner that would like to rent one room out of their house, and we've told them no, and so they want to
As a
bring,
nightly?
and so they want to amend the village code. So we're bringing it to council in April for their recommendation.
I mean, that's how Airbnb started, so that's not a crazy use case. But right now, the short-term rental code says you can't rent out one room. And if you have an ADU, you can't rent that out short-term.
Right,
Is that in the overlay in this,
because it's a conditional use permit in the R1.
to have that? Okay. So it is covered elsewhere in the zoning district, right here.
In R1.
well, if this is the place where you would say that if it's allowed on a lot with a primary residence, and then you also said that it needed to be a long-term rental,
That's how it reads now.
do you want to keep it that way?
I think yes, definitely, as far as, I think the proliferation of nightlies is creating a real, issue in this community and changing the complexion of neighborhoods and, it's the unintended consequence of a good thing.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. I think we should, if the ADU doesn't have to be your primary residence, the ADU has to be rented long-term. And I think we should be specific in this part of the ordinance.
So do we want to say that the principal dwelling on the lot needs to be the primary residence and of the owner?
What do you guys think? I mean,
Well, we need more long-term rental.
right. I agree.
And I agree with what you're saying. It's like, I have an A-frame that there's enough room on the lot that I could build an additional unit. I have it rented out long-term, but I could also put another unit, an ADU, and have two long-term rentals on that same piece of property,
Yeah,
if that were allowed. But it would not be my primary residence. But both of them, I think, need to be long-term
right.
rental.
I agree.
That's what I thought. It needs to be long-term.
No short-term can qualify. And if it has an ADU, then it can't ever be converted back to short-term.
That's how the code is reading at this point with the conditional use. The main structure has to be owner occupied, and the second dwelling unit can only be used as a long-term
Right,
rental.
but we're proposing that it could be the main unit could be just a long-term rental.
Right.
But the additional unit on that piece of property would also be,
Long-term.
That's how it's stated in the code as it reads today.
But you're saying that it's the primary residence
The
is
primary
a,
residence of the main structure, and then the second structure has to remain a long-term rental.
but you're saying that the primary, though, is, needs to be owner occupied.
That's how it reads today.
Owner occupied, meaning that you have to live there? Okay, that's what we're.
Yeah, that's what we're
where we're
discussing.
trying to split hairs and.
Right. And so, for
We're trying
example,
to create more long-term rental by not having it owner occupied.
Right, now, I get what you're saying. So for the modifications for how it reads right now, remove the requirement of owner occupied, but remain that they both must remain long-term.
Long-term. If it has an
Upon the
ADU, both
conditional
need to be
use.
long-term.
now, just to play devil's advocate, because I think that that's the right move. This does blur the line between an R1 and an R2, because in R2, you can have 2 dwelling units on the same lot. The only difference is in this, we get to see, it comes to this board and we get to decide if we're cool with it or not, right? That's the main difference.
It's a big difference.
So we can recommend it to council. They might have, if you guys are, I mean, I don't know if we need to take a vote on that. Any other discussion? I mean,
Let's
I
add
think,
to
yeah.
it.
Y'all just keep making the changes and then she'll document it and then the motion will just say
Right.
with said changes.
okay.
So can I just get clear?
Yeah.
You're saying that the principal dwelling, both the principal dwelling and the ADU need to be,
Long
let
term.
me see. The
Long-term
principal
rental.
dwelling needs to be either owner occupied, or a long-term rental?
Correct.
Primary residence of the owner for an ADU, the ADU needs to be a long-term rental. I think we're removing the primary residence of the owner. And then we're just saying, if you want to add an ADU, it has to be a long-term rental.
Both of them need to be.
Both have to be a long-term rental.
Okay, so that's clear. Okay, I think the rest of this language is just coming from the old ordinance. And then on the, I don't think we got all the way through the, dimensions. So the lot area would be 7,500 square feet. The front setback would be 15. Side would be 10 on the main structure, but it could be 5 on an accessory structure.
5 on the side of the accessory structure.
Oh, not the rear. Sorry. So I don't have a side setback for the accessory structure, so it would still be, so we would need to add that.
Are you talking about the rear stuff?
No, it was the side, because we get a lot of side variances.
Why would
Well-
it be any different than the main dwelling?
Right, I would assume that both structures would adhere to the setbacks.
So the question would be, if you get, if you are getting a lot of variance requests, should the side setback for both be 5, or do we need to add a setback here for the accessory structure? A side setback?
I think it's for any structure on the property that you have to adhere to the same setback.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't make them separate.
yeah,
Should it be 10 feet or 5 feet?
Whatever it is now.
10 feet.
yeah.
Up above, it's 10.
Yeah, I think, Phyllis, what we're saying is that it should just be the same setbacks, regardless of the number of dwellings, structures on the property. It all has to be on the lot
Accessory building.
with the same setbacks.
Right, and my question is, if you're getting a lot of variance requests, do you want a 5-foot setback or a 10-foot setback on the side for everything?
Oh,
Because
The staff
right
is
now,
recommending 5?
they're both the same, it's only the rear
The
that's
accessory.
different.
on,
So,
I guess the first thing is we would remove the rear setback for the accessory structure, right? And just have setbacks in general? Right, so where your cursor is right now, we would propose removing that line, and then we're open to discussion on what the setbacks are.
Right.
For everything.
For everything, and I think the staff recommended 5 feet on the sides. And do you all have opinions on setbacks?
What about the rear?
I think we need to leave the 10 feet on the sides.
Lean, okay.
And then we could reduce the rear to 15.
Cities that have houses right next to each other, the fire department wants 5 feet in between each, so they have a 10-foot path to get fire to the back. That's the only reason that.
And the building
most
code.
municipalities, they have 5-foot setback.
All right.
Okay. So then the setbacks we have listed up above, 15 for the front, 20 for the corner, it looks like, 10 for the side, 20 for the rear. Are we good with those setbacks?
Yeah, I think we should change the rear to 15.
And this changes the front and rear to 15 by the looks of it, right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, this would be.
So you don't need that little exception for, well, maybe for the schools, but not the other two.
Yeah, good catch. And I think since we're looking at R2, it seems like there is another setback for an accessory structure on R2. Are we in agreement that setbacks are setbacks? Yep. Okay, so for all setbacks, I think for any of them, it should just be one set of setbacks. This is R2, yeah?
Oh, okay, so we'd get rid of these.
Yeah.
So is corner rear a thing?
I mean, it could be. We have some windy roads here, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
I think we want to
It
just.
seems like it could just be the same as your regular rear. So for R2, would you want to change it to the same thing, 15 in the front, 15 in the back?
Yeah.
Yes.
Correct, yep,
Keep it consistent.
yeah.
Okay. And then we did have a discussion about the district standards for R2. In the current code in R2, your duplex has to be, or your 2-unit structure has to be 1 per lot. And what we talked about in R2 was that you could have something like a compound situation that was composed of duplexes, and that they could be on a lot as long as they met the minimum lot size and the density. So does that make sense to you all? That's something different.
This is one, R2 I've been very confused on, because in theory, you could have up to 8 units on an R2, because you could have 2 detached structures that each have 4 units inside of those structures. Is that what you're getting at there, Phyllis? Is that what we are looking
Well,
for?
they're 2-family units each, so it would be duplexes. So it doesn't have up to 4.
Well, so a
You're gonna
duplex,
have-
sorry, Phyllis, a duplex is just 2 units that share a wall. That's the definition.
Right.
And I think with R2, you can have up to 2 duplexes, right? You can have 2 detached buildings.
No.
Okay, so the, up above where it says purpose, and you can have 2 family dwellings. I think this is where we're having the conflict, right? A 2-family dwelling, is that 2 structures? And inside those 2 structures, could you have 4 units?
No, it's 2 units in a duplex structure.
Okay, so then it's only one structure on the lot.
The question that we had was if you have, say, a 2-acre lot, could you build it out in duplexes that shared common area?
Yeah, I mean, that's the most relevant example that we're dealing with now.
So it would meet the density, it would exceed the minimum lot area, but it would be composed of duplex structures in sort of a compound type arrangement.
Right, which gets into like townhome, I mean, that, in my opinion, is R4. It's R3, it's a lot higher density. Because if I have 2 acres and I can put 16 units on there, I mean, that's an apartment complex. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I view R2 as small multifamily, so 4 or fewer units with one building.
Yeah, and the fourplexes and triplexes are conditional uses.
Yeah.
But, so this was kind of what we had put together to suggest you could build out a, like a little complex that was composed of duplexes. But what I hear you saying is you would consider that an R4 and should not be this district.
I mean, the Remington thing, if we're going to use that as an example,
Yeah.
I think he has to subdivide it and then put up duplexes if it was zoned R2.
So that
That's
means
not what he was
this
wanting,
would,
but like,
this would,
I have 2 acres, right? And I would want to have as many units as possible on that.
whoops.
I think you would have to go through the process of subdividing it so you can see where access will get to those lots. And then not having more than one building per lot, I think, is the way that I would view it. I don't know. I'm open to suggestions or thoughts on that.
You're considering, though, it's R2 zoning.
Right.
If it were higher zoning, it wouldn't have to be subdivided. It could
No,
be,
you have higher density.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. In other words, Remington, if he went for a higher density zoning, he wouldn't have to subdivide.
Subdivide.
And
Yeah.
it really,
In that context, he wouldn't be able to upzone because nothing around it is
Right.
R3 or 4.
Right, true.
So it would prevent the conflicting zoning, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
because in the context, this would not be a higher density. It would just be not individual lots.
Right, but you could put 4 units on that 9 individual lots with a conditional use.
Yeah. Okay, well, the way it was before was that these were 1 per lot, 1 structure per lot, and we could just leave it like that.
Right, I think the confusion and what we got into with that specific example was the acreage, right? So it says 9 dwelling units per acre. So
Right.
in the context of what we were going through, he could do 9 units for those, 18 units for those 2 acres, and then in theory, 18 units per those 2 acres
Yeah,
In an R2 zone.
in an R2 zone. And I think that was where we had the issue.
so he could still do the 18 units, he would just need to subdivide?
I think that, I don't necessarily have an issue with the information down below, the buildings on individual lots. I think I have an issue with the 9 dwelling units per acre.
Oh,
I don't know. I mean, we can also just punt this and say, council, you deal with it, but.
okay, I think the 9 units per acre may be what's in the code now,
Right.
but we could, it could change.
What's your minimum lot size for R2?
Yeah.
Well, right
And I-
here it says 9,000 square
9,000.
feet.
9,000 square feet.
That's
is the
another one we
minimum.
need to amend to, Phyllis, to make it the math match. It should, just be the 4,000?
43,560, that's not 9 units,
Divided by
Hey, what,
9,000.
right?
can you say that again, Sam?
4.72.
It'll be
So
4,000.
Yeah, 43,560
Yeah.
per acre, 9,000,
Divided by 9,000.
It's like 4.5.
you get A little over 4.5.
yeah, units.
Lots per acre. So how many, we're talking, that'd be 240, that's still
9.
8,
It's still
9,
8,
yeah, that's 9 units. per
So if
acre.
it's 9,000 square
So
feet,
the math still is the same.
that would be 4,500 per unit.
So then it would be fine, I guess, then if the math
Yeah,
is the same.
the math is the same.
Same.
Yeah.
So what was the 4,000?
Because 100 times 40 does not equal 9,000.
What,
The 40
That's what it
feet per
says in the
unit is what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but it might be that's just the minimum width. Oh, I see what you're saying. So, well, yeah, but if they have to have 9,000 square feet, they would have to have something bigger than the 40 by 100. Those are just the minimum dimensions on one dimension,
Yeah.
right? So if it was going to be 100 feet deep, it would have to be 90 feet wide. If it was 80 feet wide, it would have to be a little over 100 feet deep.
Yeah, I think the issue that I had, using Remington as an example, is the above stuff where it says 9 dwelling units per acre. Even though the math is the same, he wasn't going to have to replat or break up the lot based off of that statement. And I think if we remove that, he would then have to have per lot area, right? So then he would have to replat, even though it's the same math.
How would
make
you
sense?
recommend rephrasing that, though? I see what you're saying.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the lot size should, I don't know, that's a good question.
I mean, maybe instead of giving the density, if you really want one structure per lot, is you just say that, one structure per lot, and go with the lot dimensions and don't use density.
Yeah, because then they'll be restricted by
what I
setbacks.
see,
It's gonna be.
Yeah, they'll be
the lot dimension size.
restricted by the lot size,
And if
dimensions,
it's
and the
9,000,
setbacks.
You know, square
I
feet.
agree.
It's gotta be 9,000 square feet, and the home has to be 4,500 square feet for 2 units.
Yeah.
So, since we have so many irregular lots in town here, you're gonna be governed by this, by what the square footage is.
Yeah.
And we just gotta stick to it.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot.
So we would take that out,
no, we
we
don't.
would take this out.
See, in his position, though, I can see where you might want to cluster your dwellings closer together
Oh,
because of
absolutely.
the terrain, and put your detention pond in a corner of it, as opposed to trying to have to cut it all up. And,
Yeah.
you know, it would be easier,
I think that changes the dynamic of a neighborhood, though, when you have
does,
multiple duplexes that are, because you don't have to have setbacks on that property. I think that maybe that's what I'm worried about, because like, for his example,
You do
he didn't
have
need setbacks. He just needed all of the units in one location, so he could put them all on one corner of the lot and have a retaining pond over here. Okay, no problem.
There are
So,
setbacks.
I mean, it seems like if somebody wanted to do something like
But only
that,
lot setbacks, not physical building setbacks.
There are building setbacks per building code as well.
Okay, what are those setbacks?
I don't know, I'm not a building official. I want to say it's a minimum of 5 to 10 feet, though.
Okay. But even then, you could do, I mean, you could pack them in. I think I don't know. I think we have a good idea around deleting that sentence.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
if
we
we
could
want
leave it
this,
the
if you
two-family
want this to
dwellings per
be
lot, just one
like
two-family
a
dwelling.
duplex per lot, it should be a duplex per lot. And then you could have a different district somewhere or use another district to allow the kind of cluster you're talking about.
Yeah, I think that's, I don't know, that's R3, R4, yeah. I think that's what we're trying to avoid is the clustering.
Because if you, even if even if he's got 9 units per acre, but he's clustering it all on half the parcel, that's a different look.
I think we might want to be careful on placing the restriction of a duplex, because there are different building types for for the two-family structures, like the patio homes.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I think
We'll
this
leave
is
it
just
to
a two-family structure of any
but
type.
not the word duplex.
That's fair.
Is the word duplex in here?
That's how you were stating it when you were,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Would you
I-
guys want to make
point
the
taken.
4-unit the default? Instead of a conditional use? So right now, having a multifamily dwelling up to 4, a fourplex is a conditional, a triplex and a fourplex are conditional uses, but a duplex is approved in R2.
yeah, I'm sure that, I
You're
think
saying to
that's how
make
it
the
reads right now.
fourplex
Yeah, that is. As the default.
Same, yeah.
And just remove anything over that 9 dwelling.
And there are no other conditional uses.
Oh, wait.
That's the only conditional use for an R2, I think,
Yeah,
besides the, like,
Like
churches and
schools and
stuff and
churches,
school.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, is it noticeably different, a duplex versus a quad or a triplex? In
yes.
my opinion. I mean, you can make a,
Structurally,
structurally, you're just sharing a couple walls.
You're adding more cars as
There is that.
there is the parking, and then there is the linear feet of the structure as well.
yeah.
And how, when you have a fourplex, how do you deal with trash?
Okay. Sounds like it might be good to keep it as a conditional use then for this.
Yeah, I think you've got issues with parking and trash once you have that many units.
Fair
Yeah,
enough.
because we may run into something as big as Glenn's, like if they didn't want to subdivide that 1 2-acre tract into something smaller, and they would be able to afford it, but it'd be per condition, so we can make sure that kind of stuff is on there, but it's not gonna be something that's just granted, just willy-nilly. That way we have the safeguards in place to promote and protect the future growth,
I think that's fair.
and then not be too restrictive, but not be too encumbersome to the neighbors.
Is he still working on this?
So the rezone is being heard, as set forth by council, because you guys made the recommendation. That's scheduled for April 11th. So then depending on the rezone outcome on how that goes, that'll dictate the future proceedings of the requirements. But as required, that you guys seen in the case study, he would be required to still go through site plan and development.
What time is that meeting?
1 o'clock. What time the case is heard, I don't know, but it starts at 1.
Okay.
They do move around items on the agenda and stuff like that, so it doesn't
Okay.
necessarily
Just-
follow like ours.
Thank you.
Okay, this is,
Just Phyllis, maybe just to continue on, we haven't seen or heard any R3 or R4 conditional uses. And is there any changes to those two zonings, Phyllis? R3 or R4?
well, let's see. So the R3 multifamily, I think is the same as it was, and just the specific district standards were pulled from the existing code. And then the setbacks vary, and I believe this was pulled from the existing code.
Okay.
So if you wanted to change this, this would be the time to do it.
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head anybody discussing those, because the magnitude that they're developed has been pretty appropriate for the areas that we actually have available for that.
Right. There's only one R4 district that is not built on, to my knowledge, in
Yeah,
town.
that's not built on. I think that, yeah.
And it's 11 acres right by Pinion Park.
And then R4 was kind of the same way.
Okay,
Yeah, we have quite a few R3s though.
okay. That's good.
The majority of the areas around the, I want to say it's High Sierra, don't quote me for sure. But up on Crown in the Camelot subdivisions,
Oh, really?
they're very, very large.